What would you do if one small act of kindness made the most dangerous man in Boston learn your name? Avery Collins was just a tired diner waitress working another rainy morning at Harbor Light Diner, counting tips in her head while wondering if they would cover her mother's medicine. Outside, the storm turned the sidewalk silver. People hurried past with their collars up and their eyes down. Then an elegant old woman dropped her groceries in the rain, and bright little clementines rolled into the street like warning signs. Everyone walked past her. Avery didn't. She stepped into the storm not knowing that the woman she helped was Margaret Callahan, mother of a feared mob boss. By sunrise, 4 black-suited men would come looking for her. Stay with this story because it is not just about danger. It is about kindness, power, and the price of being seen. Like this video and comment where you're watching from, before those 4 black-suited men ever stepped through the door of Harbor Light Diner. Avery Collins had already survived a morning that felt too heavy for one body to carry. Her alarm went off at 4:30, but she had been awake before it. The apartment above the laundromat was never truly quiet. Pipes groaned in the walls, dryers thumped below her floorboards. Somewhere in the alley, a bottle rolled in the wind and tapped against brick like a nervous finger. Avery lay still for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to her mother breathe. The oxygen machine made a soft, steady sound from the living room. Inhale, pause, exhale. A small mechanical promise that Linda Collins was still here. Avery slipped out from under her thin blanket and stepped onto the cold floor. She did not turn on the lamp. Light cost money in a way most people never thought about until bills became threats. Instead, she moved through the dark by memory around the chair with the broken leg, past the little kitchen table toward the sofa where her mother slept under 2 faded quilts. Linda's face looked smaller in sleep. Illness had a way of stealing from a person quietly, one cheekbone, one breath, one laugh at a time. Avery checked the oxygen tube, then the pill organizer on the windowsill. Tuesday morning. 2 white pills, 1 blue, 1/2 of a yellow tablet she had split with a butter knife because the prescription cost too much to take whole. The rent notice sat beside it. Final warning. Avery turned it face down. She dressed in the bathroom, pulling on her blue diner uniform, the one with coffee stains that never fully washed out. She tied her dark hair back, brushed her teeth, and counted the cash in the mug above the sink. $17. She had made $38 in tips the day before, but $12 went to groceries, $9 went to the pharmacy, and the rest had already disappeared into bus fare laundry, and a bill she could not remember choosing but still had to pay. Her mother stirred as Avery packed 2 slices of bread into a paper napkin. "You leaving already?" Linda asked, voice rough from sleep. Avery turned with a smile she had practiced too many times. "Early shift. You hate the early shift." "I hate being unemployed more." Linda tried to sit up, then stopped when a cough took hold of her chest. Avery was beside her before the second cough came, one hand on her mother's back, the other steadying the oxygen tube. "I'm fine," Linda whispered when it passed. Avery looked at her. "That sentence has never once convinced me." Linda's mouth twitched. "You get that sharp tongue from my side, and the bad lungs from Dad's side." Linda gave her a look. Avery kissed her forehead before the sadness could settle. "I'll bring home something from the diner if Owen isn't watching the leftovers like they're crown jewels. Don't let that man step on you." Avery picked up her coat. "I don't. I just let him stand where he wants while I go around him." Linda watched her daughter for a long second. The gray morning light caught in Avery's eyes and made her look younger than 24, though exhaustion had already written older things on her face. "You were meant for more than serving eggs to men who call you sweetheart." Avery paused at the door. "Maybe. But eggs pay faster than dreams." She left before her mother could answer. Outside Boston was wet cold and half awake. The streetlights still burned gold against the mist. Delivery trucks growled by the curb. A gull screamed somewhere near the harbor, sharp and lonely. Avery pulled her coat tighter and walked fast, her shoes finding every shallow puddle as if the city had planned it. Harbor Light Diner sat on a corner near the waterfront with a faded red sign, chrome stools, cracked green booths, and windows that fogged whenever the coffee urns started running. It had been pretty once, maybe, back when sailors came in with money in their pockets and women wore lipstick to lunch. Now it smelled like burnt toast, old grease, cheap coffee, and bleach that never quite won. Avery loved it anyway. Not Owen Briggs, of course. Nobody loved Owen. But she loved the regulars who came in before sunrise and spoke in one-word orders. She loved the old man in booth 6 who always asked for extra napkins and left $1 folded into a triangle. She loved the nurse from Mass General who drank black coffee with both hands around the mug like she was borrowing warmth from it. She loved the way the diner became a tiny shelter during storms, even if the roof leaked over the last booth. She arrived at 5:10. Owen was already there, standing behind the counter with his phone in one hand and disappointment in the other. "You're late." Avery glanced at the wall clock. "I'm 20 minutes early. You should have been 30. She hung up her coat. "Good morning to you, too." His eyes narrowed. Owen was 40-something, soft around the middle with thinning blonde hair and the kind of face that looked permanently offended by other people's needs. He managed the diner for an owner who lived in Florida and knew Boston only through bank deposits. That gave Owen just enough power to become cruel with it. "Mia called out," he said. "You're covering her tables. Mia's kid has the flu." "Not my problem." Avery tied her apron. "It never is." Owen pointed toward the coffee station. "Watch your mouth. I can cut your hours." Avery picked up the first pot and started the morning brew. "You already do." He stepped closer. "What was that?" Avery looked at him with a polite smile. "I said the coffee's almost done." He stared at her for another second, then walked away muttering about attitude. The breakfast rush came hard. By 6, every stool was full. By 7, the booths had turned over twice. Avery moved through the diner with plates balanced along her arm, coffee pot in hand, smile ready before anyone earned it. She remembered orders because forgetting cost tips. She laughed at jokes that were not funny because silence cost more. She apologized when the kitchen burned bacon, when the toast came out too pale, when a man complained that the rain had made his newspaper damp as if Avery had arranged the weather. "More coffee, hon," a trucker said, holding up his mug without looking at her. "Coming right up. Smile." "Morning ain't that bad." Avery filled his cup. "Depends who's living it." He blinked, then laughed because he thought she was joking. At 9:30, she slipped into the back hallway and called the pharmacy. The woman on the phone told her the refill could not be released until the balance was paid. Avery asked if there was any extension. There was not. She asked if she could pay part today and part Friday. The answer came softer this time, but it was still no. When she hung up, she pressed the phone to her forehead and counted backward from 10. Owen opened the office door. "Break's over." "I didn't take a break. You were standing still." She put the phone in her pocket. "Right. My mistake." The day dragged itself forward. Rain began after lunch first as a silver mist against the windows, then as a hard, steady fall that blurred the street outside. People rushed in shaking umbrellas carrying the cold with them. The diner filled with wet coats and tired voices. Avery worked the floor alone because Mia was home with her sick child and Owen refused to call anyone else in. Avery's feet hurt by 2. Her lower back burned by 3. By 4, the coffee machine hissed like it hated her personally. Then she saw the old woman. She was outside near the curb, standing in the rain beside 2 torn grocery bags. Clementines had spilled everywhere, rolling across the sidewalk, bumping against shoes, slipping toward the gutter. A carton of eggs had cracked open near the curb. A loaf of bread sat soaked in a puddle. The woman stood very still. She wore a cream-colored wool coat. pearl earrings, black leather gloves, and a small hat pinned carefully over silver hair. She looked like she belonged in a town car, not stranded on a public sidewalk with fruit at her feet and rain dripping from her chin. People moved around her. One young man stepped over the spilled groceries without slowing. A woman glanced at the mess, then looked away. Someone kicked a clementine into the gutter, not hard enough to seem cruel, but careless enough to be worse. Avery stood by the counter with a tray of dirty plates in her hands. Something twisted in her chest. The old woman bent slowly to reach for the fruit, then stopped, one hand pressed lightly to her side. Her face tightened, not from pain alone, from embarrassment, from the quiet humiliation of needing help in a city that had decided not to see her. Avery set the tray down. Owen looked up from the register. "Where are you going?" Avery was already moving. "Outside. We have customers. She needs help." "Avery." She pushed through the door before he could finish. The rain struck her hard and cold. In seconds, her hair stuck to her cheeks and her uniform darkened at the shoulders. She knelt on the sidewalk and began gathering the clementines before another one could roll into the street. "Ma'am," Avery said, raising her voice over the rain. "Don't bend down. The pavement's slick." The woman looked at her, startled. "Oh dear. You'll ruin your uniform." Avery picked up 2 clementines and tucked them into the torn bag. "This uniform has survived burnt coffee clam chowder and a toddler with a bottle of ketchup. Rain isn't the thing that's going to finish it off." The old woman stared at her for half a breath, then laughed. It was a small laugh, but real. It warmed her face in a way the expensive coat had not. Avery smiled and kept moving. She chased 1 clementine before it reached the gutter, grabbed the loaf of bread and rescued a jar of marmalade that had somehow survived the fall. The eggs were hopeless. She glanced at them and winced. Those didn't make it. The woman sighed. "My son will say this is why I should not shop alone." Avery looked across the street. That was when she noticed the black car. It was long polished and parked too perfectly beside the curb. 2 men in dark coats stood near it. They were not waiting the way normal people waited. They watched. They scanned. Their eyes moved across windows, corners, passing cars' hands. Avery's fingers tightened around the grocery bag. The old woman followed her gaze. "They are harmless," she said. Avery looked back at the men. "That is not the word I would have chosen." The woman laughed again. "No, I suppose not." Avery stood holding the repaired bags carefully against her chest. "Is that your car?" "Yes. I'll carry these over." The woman shook her head. "You have already done enough. You're shaking." "I am old. That's not an argument." The woman's eyes softened. "You do not even know me." Avery shrugged, rain sliding down the side of her face. "You needed help." For a moment, the older woman said nothing. The city moved around them. Tires hissed through puddles. A horn sounded 2 blocks away. Rain tapped against the diner awning. But the old woman stood very still, looking at Avery as if that simple sentence had opened an old door inside her. Finally, she said, "Then thank you." Avery walked beside her across the sidewalk, one hand holding the groceries, the other hovering near the woman's elbow without touching unless invited. One of the men by the car stepped forward quickly. "Mrs. Callahan." The woman lifted a hand. "I am fine, Finn." Finn's eyes went to Avery. They were gray, watchful, and unreadable. "This young lady helped me," the woman said. Avery raised the grocery bag slightly. Just fruit. Mostly innocent. The corner of Finn's mouth moved, but not enough to become a smile. He opened the car door. Avery placed the groceries inside carefully. The interior smelled faintly of leather rain and expensive perfume. There was another man behind the wheel, another in the passenger seat, both silent. The woman reached into her handbag. Avery stepped back at once. "No, please." The woman paused. "I would like to thank you. You did. With money." "I didn't do it for money." The words came out sharper than Avery intended. She heard it and softened. "I mean, I appreciate it. I really do. But I'm okay." That was not true, and perhaps the old woman knew it. Avery was not okay. Her mother's prescription was unpaid. Her rent notice was waiting face down on the windowsill. Her shoes had holes near the soles. Her stomach was empty except for diner coffee and the heel of toast she had eaten standing up. Still, she would not sell that moment. The old woman studied her with a kind of attention that made Avery uncomfortable. "What is your name?" "Avery Collins." "Avery." The woman repeated it gently. "A strong name. My mother says it means I'm supposed to survive things." The woman smiled, but her eyes had turned serious. "And do you?" "Most days." The rain softened for a second, then came down harder. The woman looked toward Harbor Light Diner. Through the window, Owen stood behind the counter with his arms folded and his mouth pinched into a thin, angry line. "Do they treat you well in there?" she asked. Avery did not answer quickly enough. "Well enough. That means no." Avery looked away. "It means I need the job." The woman reached out and took Avery's cold hand between both of hers. Her gloves were soft, but her grip was firm. "Kindness is not small, Avery Collins, even when people try to make you pay for it." Avery swallowed. She did not know why those words landed so hard. Maybe because she was tired. Maybe because nobody had spoken to her like she mattered in longer than she could remember. She gave a small nod. "You should get warm, Mrs. Callahan." The woman smiled. "So should you." Avery turned back toward the diner shoes, splashing through shallow water. Before she reached the door, she glanced once over her shoulder. The black car had not moved. Mrs. Callahan was watching her through the rain. Then Finn shut the door and the car pulled away into the gray Boston afternoon. Inside the diner, warmth hit Avery first. Then Owen's voice. "You think this is a charity shelter?" Avery took one breath, then another. Water dripped from her sleeves onto the tile. An old woman dropped her groceries. "Customers are waiting." They waited 2 minutes. You abandoned the floor. She was standing in the rain. Owen stepped closer, lowering his voice so the booths would not hear, though Avery knew a few regulars were listening. "You need to understand something. You are not paid to save strangers. You are paid to take orders, carry plates, and keep people happy enough to tip." Avery held his stare. "Then dock me for the 2 minutes." His eyes sharpened. "I will." She looked past him toward table 4, where a little boy was stirring his hot chocolate with a straw. Fine. It was not fine. But some days, dignity was the only thing she could afford to keep. The rest of the shift blurred. Coffee refills, wet napkins, clam chowder, grilled cheese, turkey club, 2 eggs over easy one customer who snapped his fingers at her, one who asked if she was single, one who left 73 cents under a plate smeared with ketchup. Her uniform dried stiff and cold against her skin. At 6, Mia came in to pick up soup for her son and found Avery wiping down the counter. "You look like you got dragged out of the harbor." "Close." "Sidewalk." Mia frowned. "Owen said you ran outside during rush." "Owen says a lot of things." "What happened?" Avery glanced toward the office. An older woman dropped her groceries. "I helped." Mia leaned against the counter. "That's all. That's all." Mia knew her too well. "Avery." There was a black car. Mia's face changed. "What kind of black car?" "The kind that costs more than this building." And men." "What kind of men?" Avery lowered her voice. The kind who look like they know where bodies go. Mia stared at her. Girl, I know. Did you get a name, Mrs. Callahan? Mia went still. The sound of the kitchen fan filled the space between them. Avery wiped a spot on the counter that was already clean. What? Mia stepped closer. You helped a Callahan. Maybe there are normal Callahans. In Boston, Avery did not answer. Mia looked toward the front windows as if the street itself might be listening. Please tell me you took money. I didn't. Of course you didn't. What does that mean? It means you have too much pride and not enough rent. Avery gave a tired smile. That is the most accurate thing anyone has said about me all day. Owen came out of the office before Mia could say more. Collins, finish the back room before you leave. Avery checked the clock. My shift ended 10 minutes ago, and your little rescue mission cost me time. Consider it even. Mia opened her mouth, but Avery shook her head once. Not here. Not tonight. She finished the back room. She scrubbed the counter. She carried trash through the rear door into rain that had turned colder after dark. By the time she clocked out, Owen had already adjusted her time card. 15 minutes gone. Avery stared at the screen. There were 100 things she wanted to say. They crowded behind her teeth, hot and sharp. Instead, she grabbed her coat. As she left the line, Cook Ray slid a paper bag across the counter without looking at her. Bread was going stale. Avery took it. Thanks. It was going stale, he repeated, as if kindness needed a disguise to survive in that place. Outside, the rain had faded to mist. Streetlights smeared gold across the pavement. Avery walked home with the paper bag tucked under her coat, one hand wrapped around it to keep the bread dry. Boston looked different at night when you were tired. Every alley seemed longer. Every passing car too slow. Every stranger too close. Avery told herself she was being dramatic because Mia had said the Callahan name like a warning. She told herself Mrs. Callahan was just a rich old woman with intense employees and good gloves. Still, when a black sedan passed her near the laundromat, her pulse jumped. It did not stop. She laughed once under her breath, embarrassed by herself, and climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment. Inside, Linda was awake on the sofa, watching an old movie with the volume low. The room smelled like menthol laundry soap and the tomato soup Avery had made the night before. You're late, Linda said. Owen was being Owen. That man has the soul of a parking ticket. Avery smiled and set the bread on the counter. Ray gave us leftovers. Ray is a saint. Ray would hate that. Most saints do. Avery took off her damp coat and hung it over a chair. Her body ached in places she no longer bothered naming. She warmed soup on the stove and split the bread, giving her mother the softer half. Linda watched her too closely. What happened? Avery kept her eyes on the pot. At work. No in your chest. Avery sighed. I helped an old woman today. That sounds like you. She dropped groceries in the rain. Nobody stopped. Linda's face softened. So you did. Avery stirred the soup. She had a black car. Men with her. Her name was Callahan. Linda's hand stilled on the blanket. Avery looked over. You know it too. Everyone in Boston knows that name. She seemed nice. Powerful people often do when they don't need anything from you. Avery carried the soup to her mother. She needed help. Linda took the bowl, then studied her daughter's wet hair, tired eyes, and stubborn chin. And you gave it? Yes. Did she offer money? Yes. You took it? No. Linda smiled sadly. Your father would have called that foolish. And you? I call it expensive. Avery laughed, though the sound came out thin. Linda reached for her hand. I also call it yours. They ate in companionable quiet, the kind that comes when two people have shared every fear so often they no longer need to name each one. The laundromat hummed below them. Rain tapped softly against the window. On the sill, the rent notice stayed face down beside the pill organizer. After dinner, Avery helped her mother settle back against the pillows. She washed the bowls, checked the lock twice, and changed into an old sweatshirt with a faded college logo across the chest. It was from a life she had almost lived. Northeastern University. She had worn it the day she got her acceptance letter. Linda had cried. Avery had cried too, though she pretended it was because her mother squeezed her too hard. She had lasted one semester before the hospital bills came. After that, the sweatshirt became sleepwear, then cleaning clothes, then a memory with sleeves. She lay on the narrow mattress in the bedroom and stared at her phone. No messages, no miracle, no pharmacy extension, no landlord apology, just the low battery warning and a weather alert for more rain before dawn. From the living room, Linda called softly, "Avery." "Yeah, you did the right thing." Avery closed her eyes. "I hope the right thing takes payment plans." Linda chuckled, then coughed, then settled. Avery rolled onto her side. She thought of Mrs. Callahan standing in the storm pearls, shining faintly beneath gray light. She thought of the clementines rolling across the sidewalk. She thought of Finn's watchful eyes and the black car sliding away from the curb. Then she thought of Owen docking her pay. Her stomach tightened. Kindness did not pay rent. Pride did not fill prescriptions. Dignity did not keep the heat on. But when she imagined herself walking past that old woman like everyone else had something inside her recoiled. No. Poverty had taken many things from Avery Collins, but it had not taken that. She slept badly, waking twice to check on her mother and once because a siren passed too close to the building. By the time morning came, the rain had stopped. Pale light slipped through the curtains. The street below shone like polished stone. Avery dressed quietly, packed the last piece of bread into her bag, and kissed Linda's forehead. "Early shift again," Linda murmured. "Always. Don't let Owen steal your day." Avery opened the door. "He already took 15 minutes. I'm guarding the rest." At Harbor Light Diner, the morning rush was already building. Steam rose from the coffee urns. Plates clattered in the kitchen. Someone complained about cold toast before sitting down. Owen snapped at Avery because the napkin holders were not full enough for his liking. She tied her apron, picked up the coffee pot, and stepped back into the rhythm of work. Pour. Smile. Move. Remember. Apologize. Repeat. At 8:17, the bell above the door rang. Avery did not look up at first. Then the diner went quiet. The kind of quiet that does not happen by accident. She turned with the coffee pot still in her hand. 4 men in black suits stood just inside the door, rain shining on their coats, their eyes already searching for her. The 4 men did not move like customers. They stepped into Harbor Light Diner as if they had already measured every door, every window, every nervous breath inside the room. Avery stood behind the counter with the coffee pot in her hand, the dark liquid trembling close to the rim. The man in front was the same one from the black car. Finn. Gray eyes. Calm face. A body built for standing between danger and whatever he had been ordered to protect. "Avery Collins?" he asked. Her mouth felt dry. "That depends." Owen appeared beside the register with a smile so stiff it looked painful. "Gentlemen, welcome. Is there something I can help you with?" Finn did not look at him. "We are here for Miss Collins." Every sound in the diner seemed to shrink. The grill hissed in the kitchen. A spoon tapped once against a mug, then stopped. Someone near the window whispered the name Callahan, as if saying it too loudly might crack the glass. Avery set the coffee pot down. "Who sent you?" Finn reached inside his coat. Avery's body reacted before her mind did. Her shoulders tightened. Her fingers curled against the counter. Finn noticed. Something like regret crossed his face, but it vanished quickly. He pulled out a cream envelope and placed it on the counter. No harm is meant. Avery looked at the envelope. Her name had been written across the front in careful black ink. Avery Collins. Not waitress, not sweetheart, not girl. Her full name, as if someone had taken the time to learn it and decided it mattered. She opened it with damp fingers. Dear Avery, yesterday you helped me when the whole city walked past. This morning my son would like to thank you properly. Do not be frightened by the men. They have forgotten how to look harmless. Margaret Callahan. Avery read the note twice. Then she looked up. Margaret Callahan. The trucker at the counter pushed his plate away. The nurse in booth 3 stared into her coffee. Owen's face had gone pale under the fluorescent lights. Avery knew the name now. Not because she wanted to, but because Boston carried certain names in its bones. Callahan was one of them. Declan Callahan owned restaurants with no signs, clubs with velvet ropes, construction firms that always won bids, and parking lots that somehow mattered more than parking lots should. Men in City Hall smiled when he walked into a room. Men in alleys stopped smiling. People called him a businessman when microphones were near. They called him other things when they thought they were safe. Avery folded the note slowly. I'm working. Owen grabbed her elbow. Go. She turned her head. Yesterday you docked my pay for helping her. His fingers loosened. Avery, listen to me. No, you listen. Her voice stayed low, but something inside it had sharpened. You spent all morning telling me nobody owes me special treatment. Now 4 men walk in and suddenly you're polite. Finn's gaze dropped to Owen's hand. Remove it. Owen let go so fast Avery nearly laughed. She untied her apron and placed it on the counter. Her fingers shook. She hated that they shook. She hated that everyone could see it. I'm only going because she asked, Avery said. Finn inclined his head. She said you might say that. Outside the cold slapped her awake. 2 black SUVs waited by the curb engines, humming softly. Their windows were dark enough to hold secrets. Avery stopped on the sidewalk. For one wild second, she pictured herself running down the block, cutting through the alley by the bakery, disappearing into the train station crowd. Then the rear window of the first SUV rolled down. Margaret Callahan sat inside in a cream coat, silver hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck. She smiled with the same warmth she had shown in the rain, though today she looked rested, powdered, and entirely surrounded by danger. Good morning, dear, she called. I told them not to frighten you. Avery looked at Finn, then at the other men. This is them not frightening me. Margaret laughed. The sound broke something in Avery's fear. Not enough to make her comfortable, but enough to make her step forward. Finn opened the door. Avery climbed inside. The leather seat was warm. The air smelled like lavender-polished wood and a world that had never needed to count quarters for bus fare. Margaret sat beside her with a small blanket over her knees and a silver cane resting near her hand. The door closed with a soft, final sound. Avery watched Harbor Light Diner slide away from the window. Owen stood inside, frozen by the register, his face pressed into a fear he did not know how to hide. Margaret followed Avery's gaze. Your manager is unpleasant. That's his natural state. He touched your arm. He does worse with payroll. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Avery looked away. I shouldn't have said that. Why not? Because people with drivers and bodyguards hear problems differently than the rest of us. Margaret studied her. And how do we hear them like invitations to interfere? For a moment Margaret said nothing. Then her lips curved. You are very direct. I'm nervous. Most nervous people become quiet. I become honest. It's a flaw. "No," Margaret said, looking out at the wet streets of Boston. "It is expensive, but not a flaw." The SUV moved through South Boston, past old brick buildings, coffee shops opening their doors, men in work boots carrying paper cups, mothers pulling children through puddles. The city was awake now, rough and beautiful under the pale morning light. Avery watched everything pass and felt the strange sensation of being carried out of her own life. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My house. Your son's house." Margaret smiled. "He would say it is his. I would say I allow him to believe that because it comforts him." Avery almost smiled. "Is your son always this dramatic? He sent 4 men to invite a waitress to breakfast. You may draw your own conclusion." The SUV crossed into Beacon Hill, where the streets narrowed and the buildings grew older, richer, quieter. Brownstones stood shoulder to shoulder behind iron railings. Window boxes held winter greenery. Gas lamps flickered even in daylight. The vehicle stopped in front of a wide brick townhouse with black shutters and a polished brass knocker. 2 men stood outside under the shallow awning. One spoke into a hidden microphone as soon as the SUV pulled up. Avery stared. "This is a house." Margaret looked amused. "You expected a castle. I expected less security for tea. Tea can be dangerous in the wrong family." Finn opened the door and offered Margaret his hand. She accepted it with a sigh, like a woman tired of being treated as breakable. Avery stepped out after her and tried not to stare at the cameras tucked under the roofline, the dark car across the street, the man at the corner pretending to read his phone. Margaret slipped her hand through Avery's arm. Avery stiffened. Margaret looked up at her. "Humor an old woman. You're not that old. You are kind and dishonest. How refreshing." Avery let her support her. Inside, the house was warm enough to make Avery's rain-chilled hands ache. The entryway opened into polished dark wood floors, tall mirrors, oil paintings, and flowers arranged in heavy glass vases. Nothing was loud. Nothing needed to be. Money whispered here because it knew everyone was listening. Avery became aware of every flaw on herself at once. Her scuffed shoes, her cheap coat, the coffee stain near her cuff, the little burn on her wrist, the way poverty followed a person into expensive rooms and stood beside them like a shadow. Margaret seemed to feel the change in her. "Do not shrink in this house," she said softly. Avery looked at her. "I'm not. You were about to." Avery's throat tightened. Margaret patted her arm. "People who build houses like this count on that reaction. It gives them the illusion of height." Avery did smile then. "You live here. I did not say I was innocent." They walked through a hallway lined with framed photographs. Avery saw Margaret younger, laughing beside a dark-haired man in a navy suit. She saw 2 boys on a sailboat, one with a missing front tooth, one scowling at the camera. She saw Declan before she knew it was Declan, maybe 15, already serious, one arm around a younger boy with bright eyes. Margaret slowed near that photograph. Avery noticed. "Your sons?" Margaret's smile thinned. "Yes." She did not explain. Avery did not ask. Some grief announced itself without words. At the end of the hall, 2 heavy doors stood closed. A man outside them knocked once, then opened one. "My son is in his office," Margaret said. "He wanted to meet the girl who refused money." "I didn't refuse to be impressive." "No. You refused because your pride is still alive." "Pride is free," Avery said. "I can afford it." Margaret laughed so suddenly that the man holding the door blinked. Then Avery stepped into the office. Declan Callahan stood near the window with his back half turned, a phone in one hand, the Boston skyline gray behind him. He wore a dark suit without a tie, his white shirt open at the throat sleeves, buttoned at the wrist. He was not as old as Avery expected. Late 30s, maybe. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair brushed back carelessly as if he had run his hand through it too many times, and the hair had finally surrendered. He ended the call without saying goodbye. His eyes went first to his mother's hand on Avery's arm, then to Avery. The room seemed to understand him before he spoke. Finn took one step to the side. The man by the door went still. Even Margaret lifted her chin, preparing for battle in a way only mothers can. Declan's voice was quiet. "You went out yesterday without Finn close enough." Margaret sighed. "I crossed a sidewalk, Declan. I did not tunnel into enemy territory. You were outside alone. I was buying groceries. You were exposed. I dropped clementines." Avery pressed her lips together. Declan's gaze snapped to her. Something funny. Avery should have said no. She knew that. Any sensible woman standing in a mob boss's office would have swallowed. The smile lowered her eyes and prayed to become wallpaper. But Avery was tired. Fear and exhaustion had always made her honest. "A little," she said. The silence changed shape. Margaret looked delighted. Declan did not. Or maybe he almost did and stopped himself before it showed. "You are Avery Collins." That's what the envelope said. His eyes moved over her face not rudely, but with unsettling attention, as if he had been told who she was and now wanted to see which parts were true. "You helped my mother. She dropped groceries. Most people kept walking. Most people are good at that." Declan stepped behind his desk and opened a drawer. Avery saw neat files, a black phone, the edge of something metallic that might have been a letter opener and might not have been. He took out a small velvet box. Avery raised both hands immediately. "No." His eyebrow lifted. "You have not seen it. If it's expensive, no." Margaret sat in a leather chair and folded her hands, enjoying herself far too much. Declan came around the desk. "You refuse gifts often. Only from men whose employees look like they know how to bury secrets." Finn made a low sound near the door. It might have been a cough. Declan looked at him. Finn's face returned to stone. Avery felt heat crawl up her neck. She had gone too far. She knew it. But the words were already in the room, and nobody had died yet, so she kept breathing. Declan stared at her for 3 long seconds. Then he laughed once. It was brief, surprised, and dangerous in a different way than his silence. "You are not afraid enough," he said. "I'm afraid plenty. I just don't like being bought." His expression shifted. "I am not buying you. That box says otherwise." Margaret leaned forward. "It is from me as much as him." That made Avery hesitate. Declan opened the box. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny clementine charm. Not flashy, not heavy, not the kind of jewelry meant to announce wealth across a room. It was small and bright, a little piece of yesterday's rain caught in silver. Avery's defenses faltered. Margaret's voice softened. "It is not payment, dear. It is memory." Avery looked at the charm and remembered clementines rolling across wet pavement while the whole city walked past. She remembered Margaret's gloved hands trembling. She remembered the way those words had landed in her chest. Kindness is not small. Avery swallowed. "It's beautiful." Declan placed the box on the desk between them. "Take it." Her gaze lifted. "Do you always give orders when you're trying to be nice?" "I am not often trying to be nice." "That explains the delivery." Margaret laughed again, bright and pleased. "Declan, She is good for you." His face closed slightly. Mother. There it was, a crack beneath the polished floor. Love but tension with it. A son whose protection had become law. A mother who had learned to joke around the bars of a golden cage. Avery recognized cages. Some were made of debt, some of illness, some of fear dressed as devotion. Margaret touched the box. "Please." Avery took the bracelet carefully. "Thank you," she said to Margaret. Then she looked at Declan. "For the memory, not for the money." Declan's mouth almost moved. "Understood." Margaret rose slowly. "Now we will have tea." Avery glanced at the clock on the wall. "I can't stay long. I have to get back to work." Declan's voice cooled. "Your manager will survive. I'm not worried about him." "No, I'm worried about rent." The honesty slipped out too fast. Avery hated the way Declan's eyes sharpened. Rich people noticed poverty like blood in water. Some pitied it, some used it. Some tried to fix it so quickly they never had to understand it. She straightened. "I mean, I need my hours." Declan reached for his phone. "You have the day off." "No, I don't. You do now." Avery stared. "Did you just call my boss?" "Yes. You can't just rearrange my life because your mother likes me." "I can." "Wrong answer." Finn looked toward the window. Margaret hid a smile behind her hand. Avery stepped closer to the desk. "Listen, Mr. Callahan. Yesterday I helped your mother because she was standing in the rain and nobody stopped. I didn't do it to get collected from my job brought to a house with more guards than a courthouse-handed jewelry and managed by a man who thinks permission is optional." Declan's eyes darkened, but not with anger alone. Interest lived there too. Most people do not speak to me that way. Maybe most people enjoy living. And you, I enjoy paying rent. That made him quiet. The room held its breath around them. Avery felt her pulse in her wrists. She was suddenly aware that she was standing too close to him, close enough to see a faint scar near his jaw, close enough to smell cedar soap and something colder beneath it. Margaret's amusement faded. "Avery, dear." Avery stepped back. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude." Declan said nothing. "I just can't afford surprises." His expression changed. Not soft, exactly. Declan Callahan did not seem built for softness, but something in him lowered its weapon. "No surprises," he said. Avery watched him. He took the phone off the desk and placed it face down. No strings, no debt, no demand. Tea, then Finn drives you back. Avery looked at Margaret. The older woman's face had become hopeful in a way that made refusal difficult. "One tea," Avery said. Margaret beamed. "Perfect." Tea happened in a sunroom at the back of the house where rain tapped against tall glass, and the garden outside shivered in the cold. Margaret insisted Avery sit beside her. A woman in a black dress brought a tray with porcelain cups, lemon slices, honey, tiny sandwiches, and pastries so perfect they looked like they had never known hunger. Avery tried not to stare. Margaret noticed. "Eat, dear." "I'm fine. People who say that in my presence are usually lying." Avery took one sandwich. Margaret smiled victorious. Declan stood near the doorway with a cup of black coffee he did not drink. He watched his mother more than Avery. Every time Margaret coughed even softly, his fingers tightened around the cup. Avery noticed. Margaret did too. "Declan, stop guarding my lungs. I am standing here. You stand very loudly." Avery looked into her tea to hide a smile. Declan caught it anyway. "You find my family entertaining. I find your mother entertaining. And me?" She took a careful sip. "Concerning..." Margaret nearly choked on her tea, laughing. Declan's eyes narrowed, but the corner of his mouth gave him away this time. For a while, Margaret asked questions. Not the shallow kind rich people asked when they wanted to feel generous. Real questions. Where Avery lived, how long she had worked at the diner, whether she had siblings, what her mother was like. Avery answered lightly at first. "She's stubborn." "So are you," Margaret said. "Mine is survival. Hers is art." Margaret smiled, and your father Avery looked down at her cup. Gone. I am sorry. He left before the worst parts, so maybe he had good timing. The joke did not land as cleanly as Avery wanted. Margaret reached over and touched her wrist. Avery did not pull away. From the doorway, Declan watched the movement. Not jealous, not exactly, but affected, as if he had never seen his mother reach for someone without fear standing nearby. Margaret's voice softened. You take care of your mother. Avery looked toward the rain-blurred garden. Someone has to. And who takes care of you? Avery smiled. It hurt more than she expected. Coffee. Margaret held her gaze. That is a poor guardian. It works cheap. Declan finally spoke. No, it doesn't. Avery looked at him. He said it as if he knew something about surviving on poor substitutes. As if even surrounded by marble guards and quiet obedience, he had once discovered that safety and comfort were not the same thing. The moment stretched too long. Avery stood. I should go. Margaret's disappointment showed. So soon, 1T, Avery reminded gently. Margaret sighed with theatrical sadness. You negotiate like a lawyer. I negotiate like a waitress with an angry manager. Declan set down his untouched coffee. Finn will take you. I can take the bus. No. Avery turned. He corrected himself before she could speak. Please allow Finn to take you back. The word please sounded unused in his mouth. Margaret looked at him with quiet satisfaction. Avery looked at the rain, then at the distance back to the diner, then at her shoes. Fine. Thank you. Declan nodded once. In the foyer, Margaret took Avery's hand again. I hope you will visit me. Avery's chest tightened. Mrs. Callahan. Margaret. I don't think people like me visit houses like this. Margaret's eyes became very clear. People like you are the only reason houses like this do not become tombs. Avery had no answer for that. She stepped outside with the bracelet box tucked in her coat pocket and Finn walking beside her. The SUV door opened. Before she climbed in, Declan spoke from behind her. Avery. She turned. He stood in the doorway of the Beacon Hill house, one hand in his pocket, the other resting against the frame. He looked like a man used to being obeyed standing there in the shadow of old brick and older sins. Thank you, he said. The words were simple. They cost him something. Avery nodded. You're welcome. Then she got into the SUV. As they drove back toward South Boston, she looked at the box in her lap and felt the strange weight of a silver clementine charm. It was lighter than rent, lighter than medicine, lighter than fear. Still, it pulled at her. When Finn stopped outside Harbor Light Diner, the lunch rush had already begun. Through the window, Avery saw Owen moving too quickly. Mia behind the counter with wide eyes and half the customers staring out at the black SUV. Finn opened the door for her. Avery stepped onto the sidewalk. Miss Collins, he said. She looked back. Does everyone around him talk like they're in court? Finn's mouth moved again, almost a smile. Only when we are trying to behave. Avery shook her head and walked toward the diner. The bell rang above her as she entered. Every face turned. Owen stood behind the counter, pale and careful now, as if Avery had returned from the rain, carrying a dangerous new name stitched invisibly into her uniform. The bell above the diner door gave its usual tired ring, but nothing inside Harbor Light felt usual anymore. Avery stepped in with the little velvet box hidden deep in her coat pocket, and the memory of Beacon Hill still clinging to her like expensive perfume. The diner smelled the same as always. Burnt coffee fryer oil, wet wool, and bacon left too long on the grill. The light still hummed. The floor still stuck under her shoes near the soda station. The coffee urn still leaked if someone turned the handle too hard. But every eye had changed. The trucker at the counter looked away too quickly. The nurse in booth 3 stared at Avery as if she had walked back from a crime scene. 2 college boys stopped whispering the second she passed. Even Ray, who had seen men fight over unpaid tabs and once watched a woman throw a pancake at her husband, stood frozen in the kitchen window with a spatula in his hand. Owen came out of the office. His face was pale. His smile was careful. Avery had never seen him careful before. "There you are," he said. Avery paused beside the counter. "There I am." His eyes flicked toward the street where the black SUV still idled at the curb. "Everything all right?" It was almost funny hearing concern in his voice when he had never offered it before unless a health inspector was nearby. Avery took off her coat. "Fine." Mia appeared from the back, eyes wide, wiping her hands on a towel. "Can I talk to you?" Owen stepped forward. "She has tables." Avery looked at him. "Do I—" He stopped. Avery let the silence sit there for a second, then turned to Mia. "Pantry." The pantry smelled like flour onions and cardboard. Mia pulled the door shut behind them and grabbed Avery by both shoulders. "Tell me the truth. Did they take you to Declan Callahan?" Avery leaned against the shelf. "They took me to his mother. That is not better. She wanted tea. With the Callahans, nothing is just tea. That seems to be a popular opinion." Mia lowered her voice. "Avery, I'm serious. My cousin used to park cars near one of their clubs. He said people don't get invited into that family unless somebody wants something." Avery thought of Margaret's warm hands, Declan's cold eyes, the little silver clementine charm. She wanted to say thank you. Mia studied her, and him. Avery looked away. He wanted to control the thank you. Mia exhaled slowly. "That sounds about right. He gave me a bracelet." Mia's eyebrows lifted. "A bracelet, I didn't want it. But you took it. It was from his mother. That is how powerful people win. They find the one reason you can't say no." Avery did not answer because she did not like how true it sounded. From outside the pantry, Owen called her name with a softness that made both women turn. Mia whispered, "He sounds terrified." Avery opened the door. Good. The lunch rush moved around her in waves. Avery filled mugs, carried plates, smiled when required, and felt the eyes of the whole diner following her. Nobody said Declan Callahan's name directly. They did not have to. The name lived in every pause. Owen hovered near the register, trying to look busy, trying not to look at her too long. By closing time, the rain had returned in thin silver lines against the windows. The last customer left a few coins on the counter and hurried out with his collar raised. Ray turned off the grill. Mia wiped down the booths. Owen retreated into the office with the cash drawer. Avery untied her apron and followed him. He looked up when she stepped inside. "We're closed," he said. "I know." He placed one hand over the cash drawer. "If this is about earlier, I handled it professionally." Avery shut the office door behind her. "You docked my pay yesterday." Owen blinked. His old face tried to return the narrow eyes, the sharp mouth, the lazy cruelty. But fear kept pulling it apart. "We can adjust that. You will adjust it." He swallowed. "Fine. And you'll pay Mia for the hours you keep calling training." His jaw tightened. "That is none of your business. You made it my business when you bragged about it in front of the fryer." "Avery, be careful." She stepped closer to the desk. "No. You be careful. You take tips from the jar. You shave minutes from time cards. You throw away food instead of letting staff take it home unless Ray hides bread like he's smuggling diamonds. You bully people because you think needing a job means we don't have a voice." Owen's face turned red. "You think one morning in a fancy car makes you untouchable?" Avery's stomach twisted, but she did not move back. "No. I think you've been touching what doesn't belong to you for too long." He stood. "Don't push your luck." For the first time, Avery smiled without trying to soften it. Luck walked into this diner wearing 4 black coats. "I'm pushing back pay." Owen stared at her, pale and furious. Outside the office, a chair scraped. Mia had heard. Ray, too, probably. Maybe half the block. Avery opened the door and walked out before her knees could betray her. On the sidewalk, the air tasted like rain and exhaust. She made it half a block before her hands started shaking. She pressed them into her coat pockets and felt the velvet box. The bracelet was still there, small, cold, impossible to ignore. By morning, the diner had changed again. Avery knew it the second she saw the black car across the street. Not an SUV this time. A sleek sedan parked under the weak winter sun like a threat pretending to be transportation. Finn stood beside it with his hands folded in front of him, eyes moving across the block. Inside Harbor Light, Owen was sweating through his shirt. Declan Callahan sat at the counter. He looked absurd there. Dark suit, open collar, polished watch, broad shoulders filling the space where tired fishermen usually ate eggs. His presence made the cracked vinyl stools seem embarrassed. Avery stopped behind the counter. "What are you doing here?" Declan looked at the coffee machine. "Buying coffee. You don't look like a diner coffee man." I adapt. "That sounds like something predators do." Finn, standing near the door, looked down. Declan's mouth twitched. "What do you recommend?" Avery picked up the pot. "For you, black. No sugar. Very bitter. Perfect." She poured his coffee. He took one sip and did not flinch, which annoyed her more than it should have. Owen rushed over with a smile. "Mr. Callahan, anything you need, anything at all, we are honored to have you here." Declan did not look at him. Avery leaned one hip against the counter. "You're making my manager sweat." "Good. That is not a reason to visit. It is a benefit." She lowered her voice. "Declan." His eyes lifted at his name in her mouth. The diner felt smaller. "I bought the building," he said. The coffee pot nearly slipped from Avery's hand. "What?" Owen made a strange sound from the office doorway. Declan turned his mug once on the counter. The owner was eager to sell. "You bought Harbor Light, the building, the business lease, the equipment, the land under it. That is somehow worse every time you add words." I reviewed the books. Avery's skin went cold. "You reviewed what books? The ones your manager kept badly and the ones he kept privately?" Owen stepped forward. "Mr. Callahan, there has been a misunderstanding." Declan finally looked at him. Owen stopped speaking. Declan's voice stayed mild. "Expired food in dry storage. Unsafe wiring near the freezer. Wage theft. Tip theft. Time card manipulation. 3 employees paid under the table badly. 1 worker threatened for asking about missing overtime." Ray appeared in the kitchen window, face still. Mia stood near booth 2 with a towel in her hand. Avery felt anger rise hot and clean. "You knew all that because you had people dig." Declan looked at her. "Yes. You bought my workplace because Owen is a thief." "Yes. And because he threatened me." A pause. Too small for anyone else to catch. Avery caught it. Her voice dropped. "How did you know what he said to me?" Declan said nothing. The coffee machine hissed behind her. Avery stepped out from behind the counter. "You had me watched. To keep you safe. I didn't ask you to keep me safe. You attracted attention yesterday. No. Your family attached attention to me." His jaw tightened. My mother spoke warmly of you. Word travels. That is not my fault. No, but I'm the one being followed. Declan's eyes changed. The anger in Avery faltered. He stood slowly. Yes. The room seemed to tilt. Avery heard Mia whisper her name. Declan lowered his voice. Someone followed you home last night. Not my men. Avery stared at him. The diner became too bright, too loud, too full of air she could not use. Who? That is what I intend to find out. She laughed once, but it came out wrong. So helping a woman with groceries got me a stalker. Declan's face remained calm. His eyes did not. Yes, that is the worst thank you gift I have ever received. I know. She hated that he sounded sorry. It made him harder to hate. Owen took one step toward the office. Finn moved before anyone else noticed. He did not block Owen with force. He simply appeared in his path. Declan looked at Mia. You are Mia Foster. Mia straightened. Yes. You are the acting manager until proper paperwork is finished. Her mouth opened. What Owen Briggs is removed from the premises. Owen exploded. You can't do that. Declan looked at him. I already did. Avery turned on Declan. You don't get to decide everything. I decide what happens in a building I own. You bought it 5 minutes ago. 42 minutes. That is not the point. Declan stepped closer. Not enough to frighten her. Enough to make the rest of the diner vanish at the edges. I did not buy it to own you. Then stop acting like everything near me is yours to fix. His voice lowered. A man followed you home. And you think that gives you permission to take over my life? I think it gives me responsibility. Avery shook her head. No, responsibility asks. Control just arrives. The words landed between them. Declan did not answer. For a moment, Avery saw the fight inside him. Not doubt exactly. Declan was not a man who doubted easily. But something in him recognized the shape of what she had said. Mia touched Avery's arm softly. Ave. Avery stepped back. I need air. She walked out of the diner into the cold. Declan followed. Of course he did. She turned at the curb. Do not. He stopped 2 feet away. Traffic moved behind him. Wind tugged at his coat. In daylight he looked less like a myth and more like a man who had slept badly and trusted nobody. I am trying to keep you alive, he said. I was alive before yesterday. Were you safe? She looked at him sharply. No, but at least the danger was familiar. That silenced him. Avery wrapped her arms around herself. Do you know what it feels like to have people make decisions over your head because they have more money, more power, more ways to ruin you? Declan said nothing. My landlord does it. Owen does it. Pharmacies do it. Hospitals do it. Bills do it. And now you walk in with your black cars and your quiet men and call it protection. His face tightened. I am not Owen. No. Owen steals small because he's small. You move the whole room and expect everyone to thank you for the new walls. Declan's gaze held hers. Behind him, Finn watched the street. Avery saw his eyes pause on a man near a newspaper box, then move on. Declan noticed her noticing. You see it now? Avery's throat went dry. The man? Possibly nothing. Possibly. Declan turned his head slightly. Finn crossed the street. The man by the newspaper box folded his paper and walked away too quickly. Avery's pulse kicked. Declan's voice softened by a fraction. Let me drive you home tonight. No. Avery. No. Then Finn drives you. She stared at him. Did you hear anything I just said? Yes. And I am asking badly. Despite everything, a laugh escaped her. That is the most honest thing you've said. His eyes stayed on hers. Please let me make sure you and your mother get home safely. The word please carried weight from him. It did not erase the problem, but it slowed her refusal. Avery looked back at the diner. Mia stood inside watching worry written across her face. Owen was being escorted out by Finn, now his coat clutched in one fist, his dignity left somewhere near the register. Avery rubbed both hands over her face. Fine, tonight. One ride, no decisions, no surprise guards. No buying my apartment building. Declan's mouth almost moved. No buying your apartment building, I mean it. I heard you. She pointed at him. You have a face that makes promises like paperwork. That is better than no paperwork. Barely. That evening, Avery worked through a diner that felt like it had been lifted and set down in the wrong place. Mia moved through the floor as if afraid the manager title might bite her. Ray kept grinning when nobody looked. 2 staff members cried in the back after Finn handed them envelopes with corrected wages from the preliminary audit. Avery wanted to stay angry. She was angry. But when Ray unfolded his check and whispered, "My kid needs braces," Avery had to turn away. Declan had done the right thing. That was the complication. He often did the right thing in the wrong way. At 9:30, Avery locked the diner door from the inside. Mia hugged her longer than usual. "Call me when you're home." "I will." And Avery, "Yeah, be careful with him." Avery looked through the glass. Declan stood beside the black sedan, speaking quietly to Finn. "I'm trying." Outside, Declan opened the car door for her. "I can open doors." "I know. Then why are you doing it?" "Because my mother would haunt me if I didn't." Avery got in. The drive to her apartment was quiet at first. Boston slipped by in wet reflections. Neon signs bled color across puddles. A bus sighed at the corner. Somewhere near the harbor, fog pressed low between buildings. Avery kept her hands folded in her lap. Declan drove himself. No driver, no partition, just his hands on the wheel and the city moving around them. "I removed the guards from the front of the diner," he said. "Were there guards at the front of the diner?" "Yes." Avery closed her eyes. "Declan, they are across the street now. That is not removal. That is relocation. It is distance. It is surveillance with better manners." He glanced at her. "You have a talent for making security sound immoral. You have a talent for making control sound helpful." His fingers tightened on the wheel. They stopped at a red light. Avery looked at him then. Really looked. The sharp line of his jaw. The faint scar near it. The shadows under his eyes. The careful way he checked mirrors, corners, movement. He did not seem relaxed, even in his own car. "What happened to you?" she asked. He did not answer. The light changed. He drove on. When they reached her block, Avery saw the laundromat sign flickering blue and white. The building looked smaller with Declan beside it. Meaner, too. Peeling paint. Rusted fire escape. One front light broken. The kind of place people passed without wondering who lived above it. Declan parked. Across the street, a man in a gray hoodie turned away from the laundromat window too quickly. Declan saw him at the same time Avery did. The car door locks clicked. Avery's stomach dropped. "What are you doing?" "Stay inside." "No." "Avery." She opened the door before he could stop her. The cold air rushed in. Finn appeared from nowhere. He moved fast, crossing the street with another man Avery had not even seen. The man in the hoodie tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Finn caught him and shoved him hard against the brick wall beside the laundromat. Avery froze on the sidewalk. Declan came around the car and placed himself slightly in front of her. She hated that her body was grateful. Finn searched the man quickly. Wallet, phone, cheap lighter, folded paper. Then he pulled out a photograph. Finn looked at it once and his face changed. Declan held out his hand. Finn gave it to him. Avery stepped closer before anyone could tell her not to. The photo showed her leaving the Callahan house that morning. Her coat was wet at the hem. Her face was turned slightly toward the SUV. On the back, written in black ink, were 5 words. The old woman's new favorite. Avery felt the street sway under her. Declan's face became terrifyingly still. He looked at the man. "Who sent you?" The man pressed his mouth shut. Declan smiled. Avery had seen men smile in diners her whole life. Friendly smiles, cruel smiles, drunk smiles, flirting smiles. This was none of those. This smile made the night colder. Declan took one step. Avery grabbed his sleeve. "Don't." He looked down at her hand, then at her face. "Go upstairs. My mother is upstairs." "I know." "Then not here." His eyes did not soften, but something in them shifted. "Not in front of her building," Avery whispered. "Not where she can hear it. Not where I live." For a second, only the laundromat machine spoke, rumbling through the walls. Then Declan looked at Finn. "Take him." The man in the hoodie finally looked scared. Finn dragged him toward the waiting car across the street. Avery's legs felt weak. Declan noticed. He touched her elbow lightly, barely enough to count. "Come inside. My mother will panic. Then I will be polite." Despite the fear climbing her throat, Avery almost laughed. I can try." The stairs to the apartment seemed narrower with Declan behind her. Avery unlocked the door with hands that would not stay steady. Linda sat on the sofa with a blanket over her knees, oxygen tube under her nose, and the television muted. She looked from Avery to Declan to the street beyond the window. Her eyes narrowed. "You're the reason my daughter came home in a black car." Declan stood just inside the door, respectful as church. "Yes, ma'am." "You trouble?" "Yes, ma'am." Avery shut the door. "Could you maybe lie a little?" Linda studied him. "At least he's honest." Declan looked around the apartment without making a show of it, but Avery saw everything he saw. The weak lock, the warped window frame, the rusted fire escape outside the kitchen, the gap under the door, the pill bottles on the table, the rent notice still face down on the sill. His jaw tightened with each detail. Linda noticed too. "Don't look at my home like that." Declan turned to her. "I apologize." "You should. It's poor, not invisible." Avery's chest pinched. Declan lowered his head once. "You're right." That surprised all 3 of them. Linda leaned back against the pillow. "You care about her." Avery stopped breathing. Declan looked at Avery first. Not possessive, not commanding, just caught. Then he looked back at Linda. "I am beginning to." Silence filled the room. The oxygen machine hummed. Avery's heart beat too hard. Linda did not smile. "Then don't make her pay for your world." Declan's voice was quieter when he answered. "I'm trying not to." Linda held his gaze. "Try harder." Declan accepted it like a verdict. Avery looked away because something in her chest had become too tender to trust. Outside the window, a black car rolled slowly past the laundromat and disappeared into the wet Boston night. Declan saw it. Avery saw him see it. Neither of them said a word in front of Linda. The black car vanished beyond the laundromat, but its shadow stayed in the apartment. Avery stood near the window with her arms folded tight across her chest. Declan stood a few feet behind her, silent enough to make the room feel smaller. Linda watched them both from the sofa, her oxygen machine breathing its steady, mechanical rhythm into the space between them. No one spoke for almost a full minute. Then Linda pointed one thin finger at Declan. "If trouble is already circling my building, you can start by fixing that lock." Avery turned. "Mom." Linda did not look away from Declan. "What if danger is going to visit? I'd rather it struggle at the door." For the first time that night, Declan almost smiled. Yes, ma'am. Avery looked at him sharply. No buying the building. I heard you the first time. You hear a lot of things and still manage to behave like a weather event. Linda coughed into her hand, but Avery could tell she was hiding a laugh. Declan stepped toward the door and examined the frame. He did not touch anything without asking this time. That small restraint should not have mattered as much as it did. "May I?" he asked. Avery blinked. The word felt new in his mouth. She nodded. He checked the lock, the hinges, the chain, then moved to the kitchen window. His jaw tightened at the fire escape outside. Avery saw the calculation move through him. Men, cameras, cars, orders, all the things he wanted to put around her life like a wall. Before he could speak, she said, "Ask." Declan looked back. Avery held his gaze. "If you're about to make a decision about my home, ask." He looked at the weak window latch, then at Linda, then at Avery. "May I send someone tomorrow to replace the lock and reinforce the window?" Avery folded her arms tighter. "No cameras inside. No men in the hallway without telling me. No one speaks to my landlord. No one touches my lease." Declan took a slow breath. "Agreed." Linda made a thoughtful sound. "He can learn. Don't encourage him," Avery said, but her voice had softened and Declan heard it. By morning, the lock was changed by a quiet man named Paul who carried a toolbox instead of a gun, or at least kept the gun well hidden. Avery watched every screw go in. Paul asked before touching the window. He asked before moving a chair. He asked before stepping into the bedroom to check the fire escape access. Declan had sent someone who knew the assignment. That annoyed Avery because it made gratitude easier. At Harbor Light, changes came faster. Owen was gone. Not on vacation. Not reassigned. Gone. Mia stood behind the counter with the manager keys in her hand, staring at them like they might explode. "I don't even know what all these open," she said. Ray leaned through the kitchen window. "Hopefully the safe where Owen hid our stolen dignity." Mia gave him a look. "You want to manage instead?" Ray disappeared back into the kitchen. "Nope. Keys look great on you." Avery laughed for the first time that morning. The diner felt different without Owen's voice scraping against the walls. Customers noticed. The staff noticed more. People moved with less fear, as if the air had been unclenched. By noon, a payroll accountant arrived with Finn. She was a small woman with sharp glasses and a sharper tone. She sat in the back booth with Mia and went through time cards, tip logs, missing overtime, old schedules, cash records, and every ugly little trick Owen had used to shave money from people who needed every dollar. Avery wanted to resent Declan for making it happen. Then Ray opened an envelope near the pantry and went completely still. Mia touched his arm. "Ray." He looked up, eyes bright. "My son needs braces." No one said anything for a moment. Ray looked down at the check again. "I can put the deposit down." Avery turned away and pretended to refill napkins. Anger was easier when help came wrapped in arrogance, harder when it paid for a child's teeth. That afternoon, Margaret Callahan came into the diner alone, though Finn stood outside by the window pretending not to hover. She wore a navy coat, pearl earrings, and a silk scarf patterned with tiny oranges. Avery saw her from across the room. "You escaped again." Margaret lowered herself into the corner booth. "I prefer the term independent arrival. Does Declan know my son knows many things after I have already done them?" Avery poured tea into a mug because the diner did not own anything fine enough for Margaret, and because Margaret seemed to enjoy that. Margaret wrapped both hands around it. "This place has a stubborn heart." Avery wiped the table. "It has stubborn grease, too. That can be cleaned." Can it? Most things can, if the right people stop pretending dirt is tradition. Avery looked around the diner, the cracked booths, the old counter, the regulars who came in with tired faces and left a little warmer, the staff who had started smiling without looking over their shoulders. I love what it could be, Avery admitted. Margaret's eyes softened. Then make it yours. Avery laughed. With what money, Margaret only smiled. Avery pointed at her. No. I said nothing. You have the face of a woman about to interfere. My dear interference is affection wearing better shoes. Avery shook her head, but she was smiling. Margaret visited the next day, too. And the day after. She came at 2 in the afternoon, always ordering tea, always watching Avery like she was studying a rare kind of courage. Sometimes she spoke with Linda on the phone. Sometimes she brought flowers and claimed she had bought too many. Sometimes she sat quietly while Avery worked, as if the diner gave her a kind of peace Beacon Hill never could. Declan came less often, but his absence did not feel empty. It felt arranged. Avery knew he was trying to give her space, and knowing that made him harder to keep at a safe distance. When he did come in, he sat at the counter and ordered black coffee. Avery placed the mug in front of him, still bitter. He took a sip. Still honest. That wasn't a compliment. It felt like one. She studied him. He looked tired. Not weak, never that. But there were shadows under his eyes, and his hands moved restlessly around the mug. Are you sleeping, no? At least lie with effort. His gaze lifted to hers. Are you? Avery almost answered with a joke. Then she thought of the photograph in the stranger's pocket, the words on the back, the way Declan had smiled before she stopped him. No, she said. Something quiet passed between them. After closing, Declan waited outside while Avery locked the diner. No grand entrance, no orders, just his hands in his coat pockets and the cold wind moving down the street. You don't have to walk me home, she said. I know, but you're going to. Yes, at least you're predictable, only with important things. They walked side by side beneath streetlights that turned the wet pavement gold. Finn followed half a block behind, far enough that Avery could pretend privacy existed. Avery glanced at Declan. Your mother said love arrives with locks in your family. His face changed. She says many things. That one sounded practiced. He kept walking. For a while, Avery thought he was not going to answer. Then he said, I had a brother. The sentence landed softly, but it changed the night. Avery slowed. Declan looked straight ahead. Connor, 6 years younger. Loud, careless, always smiling at the wrong time. Avery said nothing. My father hated guards around family. Said it made us look afraid. One night, Connor went into a hockey game with friends. No security close enough. A Walsh shooter followed him into the parking lot. The wind moved between them. Declan's jaw worked once. He was 17. Avery's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Declan gave a small nod, the kind men give when grief is too old to perform, but too deep to leave. My mother heard the shots from the car. She was there to pick him up. Avery stopped walking. Declan stopped too, but did not look at her. She never says that part, he said. She remembers the rain, the lights, his scarf on the ground. I remember my father washing blood off his hands in the kitchen sink because he did not want her to see it on him. Avery's throat burned. Declan looked at her then. So yes, I check doors. I put men outside buildings. I count exits. I hear a cough and think hospital. I hear a car slow down and think gun. His voice stayed even, but Avery heard the old wound underneath it. I learned that one careless minute can bury a family. Avery stepped closer. I'm sorry that happened. I mean that. His eyes searched hers. But fear doesn't get to drive forever, she said. Declan's face hardened by instinct. It has kept people alive. It has kept them breathing. That's not always the same thing. He looked away. Avery touched his sleeve just briefly. He went still. She let her hand fall. They kept walking. 2 days later, Margaret collapsed outside Harbor Light. It happened just after the lunch rush when the sky had cleared and cold sunlight lay across the booths. Margaret had been sitting by the window with tea speaking to Linda on Avery's phone and laughing about cannoli recipes neither of them intended to follow. When she stood, Avery noticed her hand press against the edge of the table. "Margaret." "I'm fine, dear." Avery stepped closer. "You're pale." "I am dramatic." "You're sweating." "I am Italian." "You're Irish." "Marriage broadened my talents?" Avery did not laugh. Margaret took one step toward the door. Then her knees gave out. Avery caught her before her head hit the floor. The mug shattered. Tea spread across the tile. The diner stopped breathing. "Call 911!" Avery shouted. Mia grabbed the phone. Ray ran from the kitchen with a towel. Finn burst through the door so fast the bell above it cracked against the frame. Margaret's eyes fluttered. "Avery," she whispered. "I've got you. Stay with me." Her body felt too light, too fragile for a woman who carried a name that made men step back. Declan arrived before the ambulance. He came through the door with rain on his coat, though the sky outside was clear as if storms followed him personally. His face when he saw his mother on the floor in Avery's arms was not powerful. It was not cold. It was a boy's face, for half a second stripped bare by terror. Then he was beside them. "Ma." Margaret tried to smile. "Do not make that face." His hand covered hers. "You skipped your medication. I misplaced breakfast." "You skipped your medication." Avery looked at him. "Argue at the hospital." At Mass General, doctors spoke in careful voices. Dehydration. Missed medication. Stress. Rest. Monitoring. Declan stood outside Margaret's room like a storm trapped behind glass. Avery sat in a plastic chair with tea cooling in her hands. Finn stood down the hall. Linda had called twice. Mia was running the diner. The world had not stopped, but it had narrowed. Declan stared through the glass at his mother sleeping. "She hides things from me." Avery looked up. "She doesn't want to worry you. That is not her choice." "No." His eyes flashed. "No." Avery stood. "You can't control people into staying alive." His voice went low. "Watch me." "No." The word was soft, but it stopped him. Avery stepped beside him, looking through the glass at Margaret. "You can love them. You can help them. You can build better locks and hire better doctors and make sure the medicine gets delivered on time. But you can't turn love into a locked room and expect people to call it safety." Declan said nothing. Avery's voice lowered. "My father left when I was 8. My mother got sick when I was 19. I lost school savings friends' sleep and most of myself trying to keep her breathing. I know fear. I wake up with it. I pay bills with it. I eat dinner beside it." She looked at him. "But I refuse to worship it." Declan's face shifted, pain moving beneath control. "I did not know." "You didn't ask." That hurt him. She saw it. He looked down. "I'm sorry." For once, the apology did not sound like strategy. Avery nodded. He reached for her hand, slowly giving her time to move away. She did not. His fingers closed around hers. Warm. Careful. Still dangerous, but trying not to be. Inside the room, Margaret slept. Outside the room, Avery let Declan hold her hand until the nurse came by and pretended not to notice. The man who followed Avery did not talk at first. Finn made him talk by morning. Avery did not ask how. She was standing in Declan's office when he told her because avoiding the truth had started to feel more dangerous than hearing it. "The Walsh crew," Declan said. The name made Margaret, sitting nearby in a pale robe with a blanket over her knees, close her eyes. Avery looked from one to the other. Connor. Declan nodded once. The same family, different men. Same rot. Finn placed a folder on the desk. They think Mrs. Callahan passed something to Avery during the incident outside the diner. Avery stared. The incident? Finn cleared his throat. The groceries. I helped her pick up clementines. Declan opened the folder and slid a photo across the desk. It showed Avery kneeling in the rain beside Margaret. Another photo showed the bracelet box leaving the house in Avery's hand. They think the bracelet contains a key, a code, or evidence, Declan said. Avery pulled the bracelet from under her sleeve and looked at the tiny silver charm. It's a clementine. Men like Walsh do not believe in simple kindness, Margaret said quietly. They assume everything soft is hiding a blade. Avery sat down slowly. So they invented a conspiracy because they couldn't understand a thank you gift. Declan's eyes stayed on the bracelet. Yes. Margaret looked tired and furious. They have always confused love with leverage. Avery touched the charm. The room felt colder. What do they want? Declan's answer came too fast. A meeting. Avery looked at him. No. He turned. No. You heard me. His expression settled into command. This is not your concern. Avery stood so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. They followed me. They took pictures of me. They stood outside my mother's building. Your mother collapsed because she was trying to pretend all this danger did not scare her. So do not stand there and tell me this is not my concern. Declan's jaw tightened. You are not coming. I didn't ask. You are a waitress. Avery stepped closer to the desk. And you are a mob boss who needed a waitress to remind him your mother is not made of stone. The room went silent. Margaret looked down at her hands. Finn suddenly found the window fascinating. Declan stared at Avery as if the words had struck bone. Then he said very quietly, You stay in the car. Avery held his gaze. Fine. You do not get out. Fine. You do not argue. Now you're dreaming. Margaret made a small sound that might have been a laugh and might have been a prayer. Declan looked at Avery for a long moment. He wanted to refuse. She saw it in every line of him. But refusal was the old language, the language of locks, the language she had challenged him to unlearn. Finally, he looked at Finn. Prepare the car. Avery turned to leave. Declan's voice stopped her at the door. Avery. She looked back. He stood behind the desk surrounded by money, power, history, and grief. Yet for 1 second he looked like a man asking for something he did not know how to name. If I ask you to stay behind because I am afraid for you, does that change your answer? Avery's chest tightened. Yes. His face shifted. She continued. It makes me understand you. It doesn't make me obey you. Declan looked at her for another long second. Then he nodded. Outside, the sky over Boston darkened and the first drops of rain began to strike the windows. Rain slid down the windows of Declan Callahan's office, turning Boston into streaks of gray glass and gold streetlight. Avery stood near the door with her coat buttoned wrong and her heart beating too hard. She had dressed for work that morning, not for a meeting with men who sent photographs as threats. Her shoes were still the same scuffed black diner shoes. Her hair was pulled back in the same tired knot. The silver clementine bracelet rested against her wrist, small and bright beneath her sleeve. Declan noticed it. His eyes stayed there for half a second before moving back to her face. You do not have to wear that tonight, he said. Avery looked down at the charm. I know. It may draw attention. It already did. His jaw tightened. Avery stepped closer. I'm not wearing it for them. Margaret sat in the armchair by the fireplace, pale but upright, with a blanket over her knees and anger keeping her spine straight. She had refused to stay upstairs. She had refused a nurse. She had refused rest until Declan threatened to carry her himself, and even then she had only lifted one eyebrow and told him he had become dramatic with age. Now she watched Avery and Declan with tired eyes. "Do not let them make you ashamed of kindness," Margaret said. Avery turned to her. "I'm not ashamed." "No." Margaret's mouth softened. "That is why they are afraid of you." Declan moved toward the desk and picked up his coat. The room shifted with him. Finn straightened by the window. Two other men near the door checked their phones, their weapons, their silence. Avery saw Declan become what the city feared. His shoulders settled. His face cooled. Every trace of the man who had held her hand outside Margaret's hospital room disappeared beneath the calm mask of Declan Callahan, the man men did not refuse twice. Avery hated how much she understood the need for that mask. She hated more that she could now see the wound beneath it. Finn opened the door. Declan looked at Avery. "You ride with me." It came out as an order. Avery did not move. Declan stopped. His eyes closed briefly as if he had heard himself too late. Then he tried again. "Will you ride with me?" The room went quiet in a different way. Margaret looked down into her tea, hiding a smile. Avery held Declan's gaze. Yes. The word seemed to land in him deeper than obedience ever could. They left through the back entrance of the Beacon Hill house. The rain had strengthened, striking the alley in hard silver lines. A black sedan waited with the engine running. Finn got into the front passenger seat. Declan opened the rear door for Avery. She looked at him. "I can open doors." "I know. Then why do you keep doing it?" He held the door and met her eyes. "Because I'm trying to be polite, not because I think you are incapable." Avery studied him for a second. "Better. I am improving under difficult conditions." She climbed inside. Declan joined her and the car pulled away from Beacon Hill. Boston moved past in broken reflections. Old brick buildings, narrow streets, empty sidewalks washed clean by rain. Traffic lights blinking red through mist. The city looked half asleep, but Avery knew danger loved hours like this, when people were tired enough to mistake shadows for nothing. She sat beside Declan without touching him. His hands rested on his knees, still and controlled. The silence between them did not feel empty. It felt crowded with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Avery looked at him. "Tell me what happens in there." Declan's eyes stayed on the window. "I speak with Patrick Walsh. He denies involvement. I show him the man he sent. He admits enough to save face. I make it clear you are not involved in anything." He leaves Boston breathing. That last part sounds negotiable. "It depends on him. And me." Declan turned. "You stay near Finn." That was not the deal. The deal was the car. No, you changed that when you asked me to ride with you. His mouth tightened. Avery leaned closer, lowering her voice so Finn would not have to pretend he was not listening. "I'm not asking to stand in the middle of a gunfight. I'm asking not to be treated like luggage." Declan looked at her for a long moment. "You remain where I can see you. That is better. It is not ideal. For who? For my blood pressure." Avery almost smiled. "That sounds like a personal problem." Finn coughed from the front seat. Declan looked toward him. Finn stared through the windshield. "Rain's getting worse," Finn said. Avery caught the faint curve at the edge of Declan's mouth before it disappeared. They drove toward the harbor where restaurants faced the water with glowing windows and expensive menus. Tonight, one of them had no guests, no music, no valet stand, no laughter spilling onto the sidewalk. The sign above the entrance read, "Mariner's Room in blue light softened by rain." 2 cars waited outside. Men stood beneath the awning. Avery recognized the shape of them now. Not the faces, the energy. Men who tried to look relaxed while their hands remembered violence. Declan's car stopped. Before anyone opened a door, he turned to Avery. "If something feels wrong, you tell Finn. If something feels wrong, I'll tell you." "No." Avery's eyes narrowed. Declan took a breath. "Please tell Finn first. He will move faster than I can if I am inside." The honesty disarmed her. "Fine." Declan stepped out first. Rain darkened his coat instantly. Finn opened Avery's door and held an umbrella above her, though the wind shoved water under it anyway. The restaurant smelled like lemon salt-polished wood and money. The lights were low. Tables had been cleared except for one near the center of the room. Beyond the windows, the harbor rolled black under the storm. Patrick Walsh sat at the table with two men beside him. He was older than Declan. Broad-faced silver hair combed back, a smile that had learned to lie before the rest of him. He wore a navy suit and a green tie. His hands rested on the table in plain view, which somehow made Avery trust him less. His eyes moved to her first. Declan saw it. The room cooled. Patrick stood slowly. "Declan, you brought the waitress." Avery felt the word land on her like a stain. Declan's voice stayed calm. "Her name is Avery Collins." Patrick smiled. "Of course. My apologies." His eyes slid to her bracelet. "There it is." Avery pulled her sleeve down without thinking. Patrick noticed and looked pleased. Declan stepped slightly in front of her, then stopped himself. Avery saw the effort. She stayed where she was. Finn moved to the side wall close enough to reach her if needed. Declan sat. Avery did not. Patrick looked amused. "She stands too?" Avery answered before Declan could. "I do a lot of that for a living." One of Patrick's men snorted. Patrick raised a hand, still smiling. "Sharp girl." Declan's eyes did not move from Patrick. "You sent a man to her home." Patrick spread his hands. "Boston is a crowded city." Declan placed a photograph on the table. The same man from Avery's block, face bruised now, eyes wide with regret. Patrick glanced at it. Never seen him. Finn stepped forward and placed a phone beside the photo. A recording began to play. The man's voice filled the restaurant, thin and frightened. Naming Walsh, naming instructions, naming the bracelet. Patrick's smile thinned. Rain beat harder against the glass. Avery watched Declan. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply sat still while the truth took the room apart. Patrick sighed. An overreach by a young man trying to impress the wrong people. Declan said, "Your people. My city is full of ambitious idiots. Then control them." Patrick's eyes hardened. "You don't control all of yours." Declan leaned back. "Every man who carries my name knows the cost of touching a civilian." Patrick looked at Avery again. "Civilian. Is that what she is?" Declan's hand curled once on the table. Avery saw it. Patrick continued. "Your mother speaks to her. You bring her here. You put guards at her door. Forgive a man for wondering why a diner girl suddenly matters to the Callahan family." Avery stepped forward. "Because I helped an old woman in the rain." Patrick looked at her as if she had spoken a foreign language. "That's simple. That's simple. No one does anything that simple." Avery felt a strange calm settle over her. "That must be a lonely way to live." The words reached the table before fear could stop them. Finn's posture changed. Patrick's men went still. Declan slowly turned his head toward Avery. His expression said many things. Concern. Warning. Admiration he did not have time to hide. Patrick stared at her, then laughed softly. "I see why Margaret likes you." Avery did not answer. A waiter appeared from the kitchen door carrying a silver coffee pot and 3 cups on a tray. At first, Avery barely noticed him. Then something in her chest tightened. He moved wrong. Not obviously wrong. Not enough for a man like Declan to catch while watching Patrick's hands. But Avery had spent years reading servers the way other people read headlines. She knew the rhythm of weight in a wrist holding a tray. She knew how a real waiter looked at table edges, cup placement spills, empty glasses, the path between chairs. This man looked at exits. His shoes were too heavy for restaurant work. His right shoulder sat too stiff. His fingers held the coffee pot by the neck instead of the handle, as if he did not trust the weight of it. Avery turned slightly toward Finn. His eyes were already on the waiter, but not yet alarmed. Avery whispered, "Finn." The waiter came closer. Declan said something to Patrick. Avery did not hear it. She heard the rain, the soft clink of cups, the quiet drag of the waiter's shoe against the floor. Avery saw his thumb shift. She had no time to think. Declan. The waiter dropped the tray. A gun came out beneath the silver pot. Avery grabbed the nearest chair with both hands and shoved it hard into his path. The shot cracked through the restaurant louder than thunder, shattering the mirror behind Declan's head. Glass rained down. Declan moved like he had been born between one bullet and the next. He was out of his chair before Avery saw him stand. Finn slammed into the waiter from the side, driving him to the floor. Coffee spilled black across white tablecloth. Patrick's men reached under their jackets. Declan drew his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." His voice cut through the chaos. Avery's ears rang. Someone shouted from the kitchen. She turned toward the sound. The kitchen door swung open. A second man appeared with a gun raised. Nobody else saw him. Avery did because she knew kitchens. She knew doors that swung too wide. She knew the draft of movement before the body showed. She knew the difference between a cook rushing from fear and a man stepping out to finish a job. Left, she screamed. Declan turned. One shot. The gun flew from the second man's hand and skidded across the floor. He collapsed against the doorframe, screaming and clutching his arm. Silence returned in broken pieces. Rain. Breathing. A cup rolling in a slow circle under the table. Declan crossed the room and grabbed Avery by the shoulders. His face was white with fury. "I told you to stay near Finn. I did. You ran toward a gun. I ran toward you. That is not better. It was for you." His grip loosened as if the words had burned him. Around them, Finn had the first shooter pinned to the floor. Patrick's men had their hands raised. The second shooter groaned near the kitchen while one of Declan's men kicked the weapon away. Declan stared at Avery. "You could have died. So could you." His hand rose to her face. He stopped just before touching her, as if asking without words. Avery leaned into his palm. Only then did his fingers meet her cheek. They were warm, rough, unsteady. "Do you understand what that would do to me?" he asked. Avery's heart slammed against her ribs. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I do." His thumb moved once against her cheek. "Then why? Because love that only protects itself is not love." His eyes closed for half a second. When he opened them, the cold mask returned, but not all the way. Some part of the man remained visible. He turned to Patrick Walsh. Patrick stood frozen, all color gone from his face. Declan's voice was quiet. "You brought shooters to a meeting." Patrick shook his head. "No, not mine." Finn yanked the first shooter's head up by the collar. "He came through your kitchen." Patrick's mouth worked, but nothing came out. Avery saw it then. Not innocence. Fear. Patrick had lost control of the very violence he thought he understood. Declan moved toward the table. Avery caught his sleeve. He stopped. Everyone saw it. No one breathed. Avery did not plead. She did not shake her head. She only looked at him. "Not here. Not like this. Not because of me." Declan's jaw flexed. His eyes stayed on Patrick. For a moment, the whole room balanced on the edge of the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. Then Declan lowered his weapon. "Finn," he said. Finn looked up. "Take both shooters, take their phones, take the kitchen staff, find who paid them." Patrick swallowed. "Declan." Declan turned on him. "You mistook kindness for weakness. You mistook my mother's gratitude for strategy. You mistook Avery Collins for leverage." Patrick said nothing. Declan stepped closer, voice still calm. "You are going to leave Boston's South Side alone. You are going to leave my family alone. You are going to leave her name out of every mouth you control." Patrick nodded once. Declan leaned in. "And you are going to live tonight because she is standing in this room." The words settled over the broken glass. Avery did not feel powerful. She felt tired, shaken, alive. Patrick Walsh looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time his expression held no mockery, only calculation and fear. Declan turned back to Avery. "Come." This time it was not an order. It was a plea wearing the only clothes he knew. Avery followed him into the rain. Outside, Finn's men moved around the restaurant with swift precision. Sirens sounded far away, though Avery suspected they had nothing to do with this place unless Declan wanted them to. The harbor wind struck her face cold enough to clear the smoke and gunpowder from her lungs. Declan removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. She almost told him she had her own coat. Then she saw his hands. They were shaking. Only slightly. Only because he allowed no more than that. Avery stepped closer. "Declan." He looked at her like her voice was the only thing keeping him in his body. "I'm all right." His mouth tightened. "You say that like people do when they are not. I'm scared." "Good." She gave him a look. "I mean not good," he corrected. "Real." Avery almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. He touched the edge of his coat around her shoulders, then let his hand fall. "I wanted to kill him. I know. I still do. I know." He looked toward the restaurant. "You stopped me. You stopped yourself." Declan turned back to her. Avery held his gaze. "I just reminded you there was a choice." The rain softened around them, turning from hard needles to cold mist. Declan looked at her with something open and wounded in his face. "I do not know how to do this gently." "Then do it honestly." He nodded once as if taking an oath. When Avery returned home that night, Linda was awake. Of course she was. She sat on the sofa with a blanket around her shoulders and the television muted. Margaret sat beside her, looking guilty and elegant, holding a cup of tea she had clearly criticized at least once. Avery stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" Margaret lifted her chin. "Keeping your mother company," Linda said. "She brought cannoli." Avery looked at Declan, who stood behind her. "You brought your recovering mother to my apartment," Margaret answered before him. "I brought myself. Your mother is excellent company, and your stares are dreadful." Linda nodded. "She tried to insult my tea." "I did not try." "I succeeded." Avery stared at them. Then she laughed. It surprised her. It surprised everyone. The sound came out cracked and tired and far too close to tears. Linda opened her arms. Avery crossed the room and knelt beside the sofa, letting her mother hold her like she was 12 again. Linda's hand moved over her hair. "You hurt now. That means yes, somewhere." Avery closed her eyes. "Not badly." Declan stayed near the door. Linda looked at him over Avery's shoulder. "She comes home breathing. That is a start." Declan bowed his head. "Yes, ma'am." Margaret watched him with soft eyes. Something had shifted after the restaurant. Not solved. Not healed. Shifted. The world had not become safe, but Declan had not answered fear with fire. Avery had seen the moment he chose restraint, and Declan had seen that she saw it. That mattered more than either of them said aloud. The Walsh crew backed down before dawn. Finn brought the news to Harbor Light the next morning while Avery was refilling sugar jars. Patrick Walsh had denied the shooters publicly and punished men privately. 2 safe houses emptied overnight. 3 cars crossed state lines before sunrise. Names were removed from conversations. Debts were settled. Warnings were understood. Avery listened while tying her apron. So, they're gone. Finn paused. No one like that is ever gone. Comforting. They understand the cost now. Avery looked toward the window where Declan stood outside speaking into his phone. The cost of touching Declan's people. Finn looked at her. The cost of making him choose between war and you. Avery said nothing. Finn's expression softened in the smallest possible way. He chose you correctly. Avery looked down at the sugar jar. I don't want to be the reason men live or die. No. Finn glanced toward Declan. That is why you are safer with power than most who chase it. Avery did not know what to do with that. In the weeks that followed, Harbor Light changed one careful piece at a time. Declan did not arrive with contractors and tear the heart out of the place. Avery would not let him. Mia would not let him either. Which delighted Margaret so much, she began calling Mia the General. The cracked booths were repaired, not replaced. The old counter was polished until the chrome remembered itself. The kitchen got new wiring, clean storage working vents, and a freezer that did not sound like it was dying in its sleep. Ray received proper pay and a new grill. Mia received a real manager's salary and a chair in the office that did not lean dangerously to the left. Owen tried once to come back. He made it as far as the sidewalk before seeing Finn inside drinking coffee from a mug that said, "World's okayest waitress." Ray had bought it for Avery as a joke. Finn used it without comment. Owen turned around and left. Avery framed the corrected payroll statement and hung it in the office. Mia asked, "Is that dramatic?" Avery said, "Yes." Good. The ownership papers took longer. Avery insisted on lawyers who were not Callahan lawyers. Declan did not like that. Avery knew because his eyebrow did the thing where it became a weather report. She held firm. No hidden clauses, no surprise control, no quiet little sentence that lets you replace the locks if you decide I'm being difficult. Declan sat across from her at the diner booth reading the paperwork with a patience that looked physically painful. I would never put that in a contract. You would put it in a separate agreement and call it security. His mouth twitched. You wound me. I have learned your language. Margaret sat at the next booth pretending to read a magazine. You absolutely would have called it security, she said. Declan looked at his mother. Are you helping? Not you. In the end, the papers were clean. Avery owned 40%. Mia owned 20%. The staff shared 10%. Declan's investment was silent, legal, limited, and painfully documented. Margaret held no official stake, though Avery gave her a permanent table by the window because some things did not need contracts. The new name was Avery's idea, Clementine and Pearl. Mia cried when the sign went up, then claimed sawdust got in her eye, though there was no sawdust anywhere near her. Ray made orange glaze pastries for opening week and pretended he had always intended to become fancy. Linda visited on a good breathing day wearing lipstick for the first time in months. Margaret arrived with flowers and complained that the shade of orange on the sign was almost perfect, which everyone understood as praise. Opening day came bright and cold. The storm had passed, but the streets still held winter in their cracks. People lined up outside before the doors opened. Some came for coffee. Some came because rumors had a way of turning breakfast into theater. Some came because the old Harbor Light had always been theirs and they wanted to see whether change had ruined it. It had not. The inside smelled like cinnamon coffee, fresh bread and citrus. Orange flowers sat in small glass jars on the tables. A framed photograph hung near the register, not of Declan, not of Margaret, not of the Callahan house, but of a small basket of clementines beside a string of pearls. Under it, Avery had written one word by hand: remember. Declan saw it when he entered after the lunch rush. He stopped in front of the frame. Avery watched from behind the counter. No comment, she asked. He turned. I am learning when not to speak. That is suspiciously mature. I dislike it. I can tell. He looked around the diner, at Mia directing staff, at Ray laughing in the kitchen, at Linda and Margaret sitting by the window already deep in conversation and very likely conspiring, at customers leaning over warm plates, at Avery standing behind the counter in a clean apron no longer shrinking from the room. His eyes returned to her. You did this. Avery shook her head. We did. No. His voice was low. I bought walls. You made a place. She looked away because he had become dangerous in a new way, one that had nothing to do with guns or names or black cars. After closing, the diner settled into a quiet that felt earned. Mia left first, humming with exhaustion. Ray took home a box of pastries for his son. Linda accepted a ride from Margaret, which was really Margaret accepting a reason not to be taken home by Declan yet. Finn stayed outside in the car, giving the windows only one thoughtful glance before looking away. Avery wiped the counter slowly. Declan sat on a stool with a mug of black coffee. You still hate sugar, she said. I tolerate yours. That is dangerously close to sweet. I am under supervision. She smiled. For a while, neither of them spoke. The diner lights glowed warm against the dark windows. The city moved outside, but softly now. No rain, no shouting, just tires on wet pavement and the low hum of Boston breathing beyond the glass. Declan turned the mug in his hands. I am not an easy man. Avery leaned against the counter. I noticed. I bring danger. I noticed that too. I have done things I cannot make gentle by regretting them. Avery's smile faded. I know. He looked up. I do not want to become another thing you have to survive. The words entered her quietly and stayed there. Avery walked around the counter and sat on the stool beside him. Then don't. It is not that simple. No, but it is that clear. He let out a slow breath. I still want guards near your apartment. I know. I still check the street before you leave work. I know. I still think about every window, every car, every man who looks too long. Avery turned slightly toward him. And I still need to live my life inside my own skin. Declan nodded. I know. That was the difference. Not that he had stopped being afraid. Not that danger had vanished. Only that he knew. Only that he was trying. He reached into his coat. Avery immediately pointed at him. If that is a diamond, I'm throwing it into the harbor. Declan paused. You assume violence very quickly. I have been around you. Fair. He took out a small velvet box and placed it on the counter. Avery stared at it. Declan, open it. She gave him a look. He corrected himself. Please. Avery opened the box. Inside was not a ring. It was a small brass key. Plain. Ordinary. Worn slightly along the teeth. Avery looked at him. What is this A key to Clementine and Pearl? You already have one. You own part of the building. No. He touched the edge of the box but did not push it toward her. This one is yours to give or take back. Avery did not understand at first. Declan continued, voice careful. If I want to come in after closing, I ask. If you say no, I stay outside. If you decide I should not have it anymore, you take it back. The diner seemed to go very still. Avery looked down at the key. All her life, power had meant doors closing above her head. rent notices, office doors, hospital billing windows, managers with keys to schedules and locks and time cards. Declan had entered her life like another locked door, at first beautiful and dangerous and impossible to move. Now he was handing her permission to decide where he stood. Her eyes burned. This might be the most romantic, controlling thing anyone has ever done. His mouth softened. I was aiming for only romantic. You missed slightly. I'll improve. She laughed, and this time it did not crack. Declan watched her as if the sound was worth more than every quiet room he owned. Avery picked up the key. It was warm from the box. She held it between them. You can keep it. His face changed, but he did not reach for it. Are you sure? She smiled faintly. Look at you asking questions. He looked down, almost embarrassed. I am trainable. Do not let your mother hear you say that. She already suspects. Avery placed the key in his palm and closed his fingers over it. Then she stepped closer. Declan did not move first. He waited, every muscle held still, as if waiting had become its own kind of promise. Avery touched his chest lightly. You scared me. I know. You still do. I know. But not only that. His eyes searched hers. Avery rose on her toes and kissed him. The first touch was quiet. No thunder. No shattered mirror. No black car waiting in the rain. Just warmth, coffee citrus in the air, and the soft breath Declan released like a man setting down a weapon he had carried too long. His hand came to her waist, careful, asking even there. Avery kissed him again, because he had asked without speaking. Outside Boston held its secrets. Men still whispered the Callahan name. The Walsh crew still breathed somewhere beyond the edges of the city. Danger had not vanished because love entered the room. But inside Clementine and Pearl the lights were warm. Avery Collins was no longer the poor diner girl people looked through on their way to somewhere better. She was the woman who had carried groceries through rain, stood in rooms full of dangerous men, demanded clean contracts, and turned a dying diner into a place with open doors. Declan Callahan was still not an easy man. He still checked windows. He still counted exits. He still loved like someone who had once watched a family member vanish beneath flashing lights and rain. But when Avery pulled back from the kiss, he did not hold her there. He let her choose whether to stay. She stayed. Near the register, the silver clementine charm caught the light as Avery reached to turn off the final lamp. The little brass key rested in Declan's hand. Behind them, the framed photograph watched over the quiet room. Clementines. Pearls. Rain remembered but no longer ruling. Declan opened the door for her when they left. Avery looked at him. I can open doors? I know. This time he stepped aside and let her do it. She unlocked the door, pushed it open, and walked out first into the cold Boston night. Declan followed only after she looked back and smiled.